Good evening. Queensland's flood emergency remains desperate tonight.
Evacuations and rescues are continuing in a race against nightfall as waters rise to unprecedented levels.
Now, the official death toll stands at 9, but that is expected to rise, with 66 people still missing.
Many towns face days of isolation with more heavy rain on its way.
The Brisbane River has broken its banks, with predictions up to 9,000 homes could soon go underwater.
This flood is now expected to surpass the historic flooding of 1974.
Entire towns have been knocked out, slammed by a fist of angry water. Homes were ripped off their stumps. Many had families still inside.
And others went to help them, and then it just destroyed them and fell down on top of people. People were hearing the lady scream, and yeah, it's just horrendous.
Dozens of residents in the Lockyer Valley are still missing more than 24 hours after an 8-metre wave of water rocketed down the ranges from Toowoomba. Rescuers have struggled through bad weather to get into the now isolated communities.
It is expected that we will find further persons deceased in those areas. The numbers we just don't know at this stage.
The inland tsunami is still threatening everything in its path, swelling rivers right across the southeastern corner of the state. Heavy rain, up to 100 millimetres each hour, has added fuel to the floods and forced even more mass evacuations. Small communities downstream have been inundated, and residents in Ipswich are preparing for hundreds of homes to be lost.
Scared. I woke up at 6 this morning and I phoned everyone to come over and help me clear out.
The Brisbane River has already begun to surge, with residents in low-lying suburbs fleeing to higher ground and businesses scrambling to protect their properties.
And I'm just about to go around the back and lift everything up that I can.
The city's main dam also acts as a flood mitigator. It's now dangerously full, and authorities are being forced to release hundreds of thousands of megalitres each day, which will only add to the level of water in Brisbane. Up to 16,000 properties could be affected, with the flood now likely to be one of the worst in the city's history.
Ipswich and Brisbane are now facing their greatest threat and their toughest test in more than 35 years.
Emergency crews and residents are being pushed to their limit, and it's not over yet. Summer Burke, 10 News.
The Toowoomba deluge was fed by an intense downpour which hit at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The city flooded almost immediately, water surging through the central business district. It rapidly washed through the Lockyer Valley, taking lives and properties in the surrounding areas of Murphy's Creek, Postman's Ridge, Helidon and Grantham.
The rising tide gushes like a washing machine. Here, swiftwater rescue crew teams are no use. Only helicopters can save them. Dozens are plucked to safety, but in the town of Grantham, scores remain missing. We crept into the neighbouring and larger town of Gatton to find a raging torrent.
I've never seen anything like this in my whole time of here.
A command post has been set up, but it's a dark hour.
Obviously a lot of people still to be found, and there's a process of looking for those people, and we've had some lucky escapes, and we've had some sad losses.
Here is why. Between Gatton and Grantham, major roads are destroyed. Part of somebody's home sits across this bridge. There are large sinkholes, trees have been jammed into the railing. The tower is lifted as if by a jackhammer.
We're on now, a couple hundred metres to the approach here. You can actually hear the water running under the road.
Many of those in crisis accommodation just want to go home.
A nearly 81-year-old looking after a 3 and a 4-year-old, which I'm very stressed about.
All are living their worst nightmare.
Other than that, snakes trying to get in through the doors. That was pretty scary. That's when we started to panic.
Come sunrise, the damage is staggering. We are the first to cross into Grantham, and this is what we find. There is an eerie silence. Cars, any number of them, litter crop fields. There are upturned trucks, houses are ruined, but we're forced to flee as the rain begins again. On the other side of that road is now the deserted town of Grantham. We briefly made it to the other side before the heavens opened up and we were forced to flee. Police are pulling us out. They say they're going to have to do a full-scale search of the other town. Jonathan Lee, 10 News.
Well, there are dozens of people missing in the township of Postman's Ridge. Homes were simply washed off their foundations and swept away.
At the bottom of the Toowoomba range, devastation at Postman's Ridge. Homes have been flattened, swept downstream with families still inside.
And others went to help them, and then it just destroyed them and fell down on top of people. People were hearing the lady scream, and yeah, it's just horrendous.
So many people here are still missing.
Everything else was disappearing and we thought we were gone.
When the water hit, Barry Bull scrambled onto his roof.
Then the windows started to break and the water started to come in, and we raced up onto the second story, and then I climbed up into the ceiling and punched a hole.
His home is still standing, but only just.
The force was just unreal.
Cars, fences and demountable sheds swept up in a sickening surge of water are now a twisted wreck. Power lines have been levelled and still the water keeps coming. Brian Wilmot can't believe how quickly the water rose.
You get most people out, a few of the neighbours are gone.
There was no warning, no time.
Just a slab left, huge big Queenslander, just totally gone, and we're not sure how many were inside, but quite a few.
The wave of mud has wiped out huge parts of the Lockyer Valley.
It was like an inland tsunami. The service station next door, it picked up cars. There were cars floating down here. Petrol Bowsers went down 70, 80 metres down the road.
Withcott has been decimated. Roads, businesses, gone.
It was just roared, absolutely roared.
The service station next door here, I don't think that'll reopen again.
So much damage, so much heartache ahead. Sarah Horsley, 10 News.
And as the disaster unfolded, many people recorded what they saw on mobile phones and cameras.
Here's how the people of Toowoomba covered the destruction of their city.
I'm so glad I parked at the front today. That's coming fast.
There goes the car. Over the front of another car.
Oh, that is horrible. That is a lot of water. There's another one.
Go, go, buddy, go!
Oh. That is unbelievable. Oh. Oh.
Hey, look at that. There's a container.
There goes the container.
That's going to cause a bit of damage when it hits something.
It's dropped back down now, but there's still, an incredible torrent. Was up another few metres just racing across that road there. It's left debris everywhere. That's what's washed cars away, ripped up the road all over the place.
No. Oh, no.
You got it?
Yeah. Oh. Oh, my goodness.
TEN's George Negus is also in Brisbane and he joins us from the top of the 10 News Centre. Hi George, now you grew up in Brisbane. How does this compare to other flooding disasters in the area?
Yeah, Kath, I did grow up here and I've seen lots of floods in this part of Queensland and the rest of the state as well. I've seen floods, I've seen flash floods, I've seen cyclones, but never anything like this. And the locals we've spoken to say that they believe this will probably be worse than the infamous 1974 flood 35 years ago. So they're still waiting for the worst to happen, to be honest. The thing is not all over yet by a long shot.
And that is what the Premier says as well. She expects the worst is yet to come for Brisbane, and Thursday is the day where things will get quite bad.
They were warned today to evacuate by the Mayor. He said if you have fears for your property and fears for your life, then move yourself out of here now. Parts of the CBD of Brisbane have already had some water. Suburbs have already had water. And when we were coming from the airport up here to the mountain, the traffic was quite chaotic. It actually feels quite weird. You can probably see behind me now that it's a bleak-looking place at the moment, poor old Brisbane. And that's the way most people are feeling, I think, that there are still worse days ahead for them.
Indeed. All right, thanks very much, George. George Negus in Brisbane.
Now, police have set up a hotline for relatives and friends of people affected by the flooding in the Toowoomba, Murphy's Creek, Grantham and Withcott areas. Call 1300 993 191 for inquiries or to register your details.
The Australian Defence Force is being swung into action.
The Prime Minister gave that order while also promising hundreds of millions of dollars to help with rescue and recovery.
In her short time as Prime Minister, the Queensland Flood presents Julia Gillard her greatest challenge.
Australians are thinking of you, and anything that the Australian nation can do to assist the people of Queensland in these difficult days will be done.
Amid frustration at the pace of the response, so far only 150 military personnel have hit the ground. But the PM has told the Queensland Premier the entire Defence Force is now at her disposal.
Any resource she needs from the Australian Defence Force will be made available to the people of Queensland.
Ms Gillard says hundreds of millions of dollars of federal money will be needed to rebuild Queensland. Some within government believe the cost to the budget could be billions.
There will be an absolutely massive, probably an unprecedented damages bill, and the Commonwealth Government will have to shoulder its fair share.
Dozens of nations, including the US, China and Indonesia, have pledged assistance to help Queensland cope with this disaster. But so far, only New Zealand's offer of emergency personnel has been taken up. Both the Prime Minister and opposition leader want to visit the flooded regions but have been told to wait because right now their presence would be more of a hindrance than any help. James Boyce, 10 News.
And more bad weather is still to come. Thousands of homes in Brisbane are about to be struck by the floods.
10 reporter Mark Sulo joins us now from Brisbane. Now, Mark, how bad is this expected to get?
Hugh, this is very worrying indeed now for both our Lord Mayor and our Premier. They're talking about it as bad as 1974. Over 5 metres at the city flood gauge here on Thursday at least. 6,500 homes in the Brisbane city area flooded. 16,000 properties affected in some way. Lots of them businesses, lots of people losing money. There's about 7,000 cubic metres of water.
We appear to have lost Mark Sulo there reporting from Brisbane. We hope to speak to him a little later on, and of course we'll continue to bring you up to date with what's coming out of Brisbane. But let's go just south of the border now. Nearly 2,000 people are stranded in the north of New South Wales as heavy rainfall lashes the coast. Hundreds of rural properties have been cut off with major roads underwater.
Grafton on the New South Wales north coast is the area of most concern to the State Emergency Service. Up to 100 millimetres of rain has fallen in the region since yesterday, and the Clarence River is rising. It's already claimed the sailing club and some buildings along the banks.
We just keep coming back and keep beating the odds. Yeah, it's just sad. It just happened this time of year.
Some residents have nervously watched the river surge during the day and fear their town could be in for the worst flooding it's ever seen.
Really, I think it's the unknown. No one's really sure.
Yeah, since I got here this morning, it was quite quiet. In the last couple of hours, it's really started to rush and roar down the river a lot faster than it has in the last, since 8:30 this morning. So I think we're going to really cop it this time.
The SES expects the river to peak at 7 metres and not to breach Grafton's 8-metre levees. But that would still be enough water to inundate low-lying areas and rural properties. The rain's eased off for the moment here at Grafton, but there has been an extraordinary amount of water fall in the Clarence River catchment over the last 24 hours. It's meant the Pacific Highway has been cut at South Grafton, but diversions are in place and it is still possible to travel for the moment up and down the highway, north and south. Elsewhere though, there are problems. The Bruxner Highway and the New England Highway are both cut around Tenterfield. More than 4,500 people across the state are isolated and some have been evacuated. Bellingen near Coffs Harbour has also suffered severe flooding and is expected to be isolated later this evening. The SES has warned residents on the north coast to be prepared for dangerous flash flooding. In Grafton, John Hill for 10 News.
Well, we'll return to our coverage of the flood crisis a little later on, but the rest of the day's news is next, including the blast that tore through a Sydney beauty salon.